Despite comments made this week about retirement, I don't think Philadelphia Eagles fans have anything to worry about when it comes to the future of Saquon Barkley. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Friday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code in all capital letters, Locked On NFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Despite this week talking about a potential early retirement, I don't think Philadelphia Eagles fans have anything to worry about when it comes to the future of Saquon Barkley after 2025. Saquon was being interviewed and was indirectly asked about his future in the NFL. He didn't bring it up himself. This isn't a LeBron James scenario where every year he's saying, this might be it. Like, I might retire this year, next year, who knows? But he keeps bringing it up so you know that it is on his mind. Like, that was not the context of the situation. But Saquon did make comments that I think got some Eagles fans nervous. At least I noticed on social media. I saw people discussing, like, could this be his last year in the NFL? After a historic extension the Eagles gave Saquon Barkley, if they make another championship run this year, like, could he only play another couple seasons? Will he get through this new contract that he did sign? I don't think, again, there is anything to worry about, and I don't think anything that Saquon said is all that shocking. Saquon kind of talked about when he retires, it could be, quote, out of nowhere. And so people start to link that with Barry Sanders. Like, could this be an early retirement where Saquon Barkley is at the height of his powers, just had the best rookie, or running back, I should say, season in the history of the NFL in 2024. If he has another great run this year, could he hang it up while he's healthy and while he's still in his prime? Should it concern Eagles fans? I don't think so, because number one, when he retires even if it is within like 2 or 3 years, that shouldn't surprise you. Like, this is not an out of nowhere retirement like a Barry Sanders if Saquon, unless he hangs it up after 2025. Like, that would be absolutely shocking, especially after the extension. That would be shocking. But even if he retires after 2 more seasons played or 3 more years, when you combine the fact that he's had a lot of injuries in his career, the position that he plays at running back, they age quickly at this position. You look at, he's 28 years old at this point, the accomplishments that he could have under his belt at that point in Philadelphia, I don't think that would be all that shocking. I don't think this would be a Barry Sanders type of thing where he's seen as a player that retired far too early. Again, if he retired after this season, then it would be a different conversation. But I think we all knew when the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley last offseason that this was going to be a 3 to 4 year marriage. Like, we weren't expecting Saquon Barkley to play in Philadelphia for a decade, for the next 10 years. So again, if he retired this year, I'd be shocked. But if he retires like at the end of the 2026 season or at the end of 2027, he's a 31, 32-year-old and the Eagles got 3 to 4 seasons out of him. I'm not happy if it's only 2 seasons, but if they get 3 to 4, 4 to 5, like, that's good for me. Like, I think this was always seen as a short-term piece to help you win championships now, and he already did get you that ring. Because Saquon has now become an even bigger part of this team's future and the present, with being like the face of the offense, almost being the face of the franchise, I think now people want this marriage to go longer. But we all know the cycle of life of a NFL running back. And with Saquon Barkley at 28 years old, the injuries he suffered, I think it would be ignorant to be upset at Saquon if in a few years he did retire. I don't think this would be this devastating Barry Sanders-like thing. Barry Sanders, when he retired, had a long way to go still in his NFL career. And within the next 3 to 4 years, if Barkley retires then, that's around when running backs hang it up. And I don't think Saquon Barkley is going to be a guy that wants to be a second or third rotational back until he's, 34, 35 years old. So I don't think it's really anything to be concerned about. He hasn't been bringing it up repeatedly during the offseason. I think it was more of the context of how he said it, of when he retires, it could be, quote, out of nowhere, that kind of ruffled some feathers. But I don't think he's retiring within the next 2 years, maybe in the next 3 seasons, but I think he's going to play through this extension for Philadelphia. And after that, even if he doesn't retire, at the end of this contract, I don't think the Eagles are going to want him anymore anyway. So there's really nothing to be concerned about. And I just think, even with the historic season that he had in 2024, I think he's hungry for more. I don't think just 1 to 2 good years in Philadelphia is going to be enough for him. Like, yes, again, to me, I think it's one of the seasons that a player has accomplished the most in NFL history. Like, you could argue outside of quarterbacks, what Saquon Barkley did in 2024, that was the most accomplished season an individual player has ever had. But even with that being said, I don't think his cup is full. He suffered with the New York Giants for a very long time. 1 or 2 really good years in Philadelphia. I think he's going to want more. I think he's going to also want to build this Hall of Fame legacy that suddenly he has because of last year. We all knew Saquon in New York was a top-tier talent, a top 3 talent at his position at the NFL level, but he didn't have the team accolades. He had the injuries, so the numbers weren't always there. He wasn't really building a Hall of Fame career. And because of his support system, too. Like, his offensive line wasn't great. Now that he's in Philadelphia, it changes everything for Saquon long-term when it comes to his legacy. If he has, I said on our squad show the other day, last year already could make Saquon be a Hall of Fame football player. Like, last year alone could get him into Canton. If he has a couple more elite seasons in Philadelphia, helps them compete for championships, maybe wins another rushing title, or, I don't know, puts up another 2,000-yard season, or let's say he's got multiple 14 plus, 1,400 plus rushing yard seasons. Maybe he gets 2,000 yards from scrimmage. He starts to catch the ball more. If he has a couple more of those kind of years, I think he's going to be a lock to be a Hall of Famer. And he could also start becoming an all-time great in franchise history. I think he could catch LaShawn McCoy if Saquon plays 3 to 4 to 5 years in Philadelphia. I think he could catch LaShawn McCoy's all-time rushing record. So I think there's a lot still for Saquon to play for, even after last year. I think he's going to play through the extension, and I wouldn't be really all that concerned about him retiring by the end of his deal anyway. Like I said earlier, Howie Roseman's probably going to be looking for a replacement at the running back position. The only way I would be just shocked and almost devastated with this outcome of Saquon retiring is if it's at the end of 2025. Like, if they repeat as Super Bowl champions and Saquon calls it a career, now that would be Barry Sanders' level of shock. Because, again, he's still 28 years old. He is still in his prime. He had the best running back season of all time last year. But if he retires in 2 to 3 to 4 years, that's the average life of a running back. If he was another position, it'd be shocking. If he was a quarterback, like if Jalen Hurts retired at 32, 33, yeah, that would shock Philadelphia in the NFL world in general. But for Saquon Barkley, I'm not concerned about it. And again, he didn't bring it up himself. But he said he could retire just out of nowhere. And that, I think, got people a little bit nervous. But no, I don't think Saquon Barkley is retiring, at least not when the Eagles are going to need him. By the time he's going to want to hang it up, I think Philadelphia is going to be fine with that. I think you're all going to be fine with that. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, OTAs has me thinking about some Eagles future bets that have to do with Jalen Hurts and Jalen Carter. I'll tell you what I'm talking about coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, these are my 3 bugaboos. It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on food delivery services, online shopping as well. I love vintage NFL hats. I spend a lot of money on eBay. Well, thanks to Monarch Money, I do spend still, but I budget smarter and I definitely do save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL in all capital letters at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. So it sounds like at the NovaCare Complex, one of the biggest takeaways from reporters at OTA practices these past few weeks is that Jalen Hurts looks as locked in, as elite as he ever has, especially in practice. And Jalen Hurts hasn't always been the best practice player, but reporters are talking about how efficient he looks, how decisive, how in control of the offense that he looks in year 6. And that, to me, has me thinking about some future bets that I potentially want to make. As I've said on the show, I think last year, that playoff run, honestly, those 2 final games in the NFC Championship, in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, but even before that, like the game against Cincinnati, Jacksonville, the game against Pittsburgh, especially at the end of the year, I think some of the steps that he took last year in certain areas of his game, especially from inside the pocket as a passer, especially the NFC title in the Super Bowl, I think they were so crucial, those moments, those games, in helping Jalen Hurts take this final step, this final evolution as a quarterback, where this year, I think you're going to see, like, Jalen's had some elite passing moments since 2022, but I think it's a lot more inconsistent than some of the other quarterbacks in his tier. A reason I don't put him ahead of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes is I think, although he has some elite ceiling games as a passer inside the pocket, there's also some games that he's very inconsistent and pretty ineffective. But if the guy we saw last year in the playoffs and the NFC title and the Super Bowl is the guy that we get all of this year, if the guy that we're getting right now in OTAs, it sounds like, is the quarterback we get for all of 2025, I think that's going to be an MVP finalist, a MVP favorite throughout the entirety of the 2025 season. That's going to be a player that ascends to that next level, that tier 1 status for NFL quarterbacks, where every game it just feels like he has an answer, whether it's using his legs, whether it's using his arm from outside the pocket, from inside the pocket, whether you blitz him or you draw everybody back, whether you're using man coverage or zone coverage. Like, Jalen Hurts becomes this surgical, pick you apart kind of quarterback. And he's been a big play quarterback. He's been a clutch quarterback. He's been an efficient, mistake-free quarterback in his career. But I don't think I would ever use the word surgical with Jalen Hurts. And it sounds like he's been just that, in control and surgical in practice. That's who he was in the Super Bowl, in the NFC Championship. I think at the end of last year, he figured out how to answer everything a defense throws his way. I think he figured out that final step to take. I think he figured out the blitz. The Kansas City Chiefs dared him to throw inside the pocket. They completely took away Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts picked them apart, whether they drew everybody back in coverage, whether they blitzed him from the A-gap, from the edge, double corner blitzes, you name it. If they were disguising blitz looks, Jalen Hurts pre-snap, post-snap was figuring it out. And this is going to be his second year, by the way, being in charge of everything pre-snap. There is no more Jason Kelce walking through that door. So he's going to grow even more in that department as well. Like, he is in command of this offense. It sounds like he's been accurate, surgical in practice, and I think that's going to propel him, again, into that tier 1 status as a quarterback. And I think I might, if you want to go on FanDuel and make some future NFL bets, I think betting on Jalen Hurts for MVP is a good bet. I think, and again, elite quarterbacks don't have MVP caliber seasons every single year. Like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, even Patrick Mahomes. They're not the MVP favorite every single year, but they have a top 5, top 10 floor, and they're going to have some seasons where they're in that MVP conversation, like they are an MVP favorite. Jalen Hurts, he had that year in 2022. He had it for the first half of 2023. Wasn't really an MVP candidate this past year. He's had, to me, a top 10 floor over the last 3 seasons. But again, there is going to be seasons where he's a top 3 player at his position. I think this year, 2025, Jalen's going to get back to being that player like he was in 2022, where it's him and it's maybe a couple other quarterbacks that are atop the MVP conversation. I think, again, what he did in the NFC title and the Super Bowl, I think he's going to carry that momentum over this year. He's got the monkey off his back. He's got the ring. He got the revenge against the Chiefs. He outplayed the best quarterback in football again in the Super Bowl. I think if you want to make an Eagles future bet on FanDuel this year, betting on Jalen Hurts as the MVP is something that I really like the odds for. I think it's a really good idea, and I might put some money on it myself. And again, it's 1 week of OTAs, not to overreact, but it's kind of the buildup. The OTAs practice reports of him looking incredible is just further proof of the evolution he's taking. You add on the OTA practices on top of the playoff performance, on top of the elite flashes that we've gotten over the last couple years, the elite season that he had, the entirety of 2022, where he was the MVP runner-up to Patrick Mahomes, all of that combined, on top of the newfound confidence he has as a Super Bowl MVP, all of that combined makes him a very good option if you're going to try to bet on the NFL MVP in 2025. I think that's a big-time future that I'm looking at. And another one, I got to thinking about this the other day when we were ranking our top 10 most important Eagles, and I got to Jalen Carter at number 4. If he takes the step, another step, like Jalen Hurts, like he's taking that final evolution as a quarterback. If Jalen Carter takes that next step as an elite interior defensive tackle, an elite interior pass rusher, you want to make another bet on a future award in the NFL for 2025, Jalen Carter for Defensive Player of the Year. If you think he's going to take that next step, because he's already an elite player that saved your championship season last year, that was garnering so much attention from opposing offenses that were double teaming him pretty much every single play. If he takes another step from that, we're talking about one of the best players in football. We're talking about an Aaron Donald, elite Fletcher Cox, elite Chris Jones level of player, if not better. Like Jalen Carter taking another step, I think he has all-time great potential. And Vic Fangio said it himself during the press conference last week during OTAs. He concurred with Jeremiah Trotter Sr. that Carter still is just scratching the surface. Like he's still playing so much of his position based on just raw physical gifts and athleticism. Like he still has not fully developed at the defensive tackle position. Like he can still develop, and that's scary. Like if that's the case, if that's true, if what Trotter and Fangio are saying is correct, then that's another good bet. Because that means the sack total will start to build up more. Like he had 6 sacks last year or his rookie year. If this year we're talking like double-digit sacks, he's the number 1 ranked defensive tackle in pass rush win rate and overall pass rush grade on platforms like PFF. And the Eagles, again, are the number 1 seed in the NFC if they're perennial Super Bowl contenders. Jalen Carter is going to be in that conversation. If he can start overcoming those double teams and not just opening things up for his teammates and elevating guys like Moro Ujoma, who's going to get a lot of one-on-one looks, or a Nolan Smith next to him on the defensive line. But if he says, it doesn't matter, you can double team me, triple team me, I'm still getting to the quarterback and I'm still going to put up the numbers that these elite of the elite have done in years past, then those are 2 futures that I really like. Your 2 pillars of this roster, the 2 most important players on both sides of the ball. Jalen Hurts is the face of your offense. Jalen Carter is the face of your defense. I think it's a good bet to take those guys for MVP and for Defensive Player of the Year. So I was looking through FanDuel today, figuring out what bets I want to make. I think if I'm going to make some Eagles bets, I do like to make a couple Eagles like future bets every single year. I didn't like Jalen Hurts for MVP last year. I was out on that. I wasn't even in on Carter for Defensive Player of the Year. Last year, I really liked Quinyon Mitchell for Rookie of the Year. I did like the idea of Saquon Barkley for Offensive Player of the Year, even though I didn't bet it, so I'm not going to own that. This year, though, I like Hurts for MVP, and I do like Carter for Defensive Player of the Year. I was thinking about NFL futures in general, and there's one across the league that I feel like might be a little bit impulsive, and I might regret it down the road. But coming up next, I have a way too early NFL prediction for you in 2025 that I might regret later, but I'm feeling the hype right now. I want to see if you guys agree with me, so we'll get into it. Coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, so again, I was spending some time today on FanDuel, checking out some of their NFL future bets. I'm thinking about putting some money on Jalen Carter for Defensive Player of the Year, Jalen Hurts for MVP. Just kind of just thinking about the NFL landscape throughout 2025. Like, who's Jalen Hurts' competition for MVP? Jalen Carter for Defensive Player of the Year. Do I want to make any future bets on teams to make the playoffs? You know, over-under is on win-loss totals. Just getting ready for the season. It's June 6th, but I'm ready for football already, to be honest. And there's an interesting bet that I think I want to make. And we had some very interesting conversations on X yesterday about this topic. I have a way too early NFL prediction that I might change my mind by the end of the summer. If I don't, I might live to regret this prediction halfway through the year next year. At the end of the year, I might be saying to myself, what the hell was I thinking putting money on FanDuel on this bet? But right now, June 6th, feeding into some of the OTA hype, overthinking this a little bit with too much time to think about these predictions. A non-Eagles future that I might place on FanDuel is the New York Jets to be a playoff team, to be not winning the AFC East over the Buffalo Bills, but if you told me the New York Jets are the 6th seed or the 7th seed is a wild card team in the AFC this year, I wouldn't be surprised. They are building almost a poor man's version of what the Philadelphia Eagles were in 2024. And I think in that conference, I think it might be good enough to be the 6 or 7 seed. I might take the New York Jets. I think I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to regret it later on down the road. It feels impulsive right now. It feels like I'm buying into some of the OTA hype. But I'm a Justin Fields supporter. I think Aaron Glenn seems like a floor raiser of a head coach. The vibes just seem so much better with Glenn and Fields than when Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh were running that organization last year. And I think they're going to build this RPO-style, run-heavy, mistake-free offense featuring Justin Fields, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson. I think Justin Fields showed last year in Pittsburgh that he can take care of the football, not throw interceptions, but still create explosives on the ground with his legs. He's a really good deep ball thrower. I think he's kind of a poor man's version of Jalen Hurts. Like, I think that Jets offense can take care of the football, run the football very efficiently, and take deep shots to Garrett Wilson. And if you have those three things, that recipe, and you're not turning the football over, I think they have a really good defense. If their defense plays like they did 2 years ago, they have a third-place schedule. I'm not saying they're going to be the 1 seed in the AFC. I'm not saying they're going to beat out the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East. I'm not saying they're going to win their division. But I think the Miami Dolphins are coming down in that division. And I think the AFC, when it comes to the wild card teams, when you get past the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens, when you get past those three teams, the conference is wide open. If you told me the New York Jets grabbed one of those three wild card spots, I wouldn't be surprised. Every year, there is a team like this that was at the bottom of the league the year before, has an easy schedule, feels refreshed with a new quarterback or a new head coach, and they exceed expectations. The Philadelphia Eagles actually were that kind of team in 2021. That's who I think the 2025 New York Jets can be, is the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles. So that's why I wanted to talk about this today, is I feel like the Jets saw what the Eagles did and said, okay, and I think Jalen Hurts is an elite quarterback now, but the Jets might have seen it as, okay, the Eagles don't have a top 3, top 4 quarterback in football, but yet they're still building this sustainable winner year after year. How did they do that? And I could just see, based on some of the moves they're making, that they're kind of trying to be, again, a very poor man's version of who the Eagles have been over the last few years. And again, the Eagles have a gear in them that the Jets are not going to have when it comes to throwing the football. I think Jalen Hurts is a far superior quarterback to Justin Fields. I think Nick Sirianni is a better coach than Aaron Glenn, but Justin Fields is a similar style quarterback to Jalen Hurts. Aaron Glenn, I think, is a similar style of head coach to Nick Sirianni. I think that offense is going to be very similar to what the Eagles do. RPO, run heavy, take care of the football, take deep shots, play with a really good defense, and hope you take advantage of a third-place schedule. I think, again, if I'm going to make a future that doesn't have to do with the Philadelphia Eagles on FanDuel this year, a future that I might come to regret if Justin Fields ends up not being good, and they're just too far away from a talent perspective compared to some of these other teams in the AFC. I might live to regret this bet, but I think I'm going to put some money. If I had to predict one team in the AFC that unexpectedly makes it, like the 2021 Eagles did, or like last year in the NFC, like the Washington Commanders, like who's that team this year? I think it might be in the AFC, and I think it might be the New York Jets. I don't know who would be in the NFC. Maybe the Arizona Cardinals. That's a team that I really like what they did this offseason, including stealing Josh Sweat from the Philadelphia Eagles. Arizona could be that team. But right now, like feeling the hype of the OTAs, mini camp this summer, kind of just thinking about things big picture this year, an impulsive prediction. I think the Jets are kind of taking a page from the Eagles playbook, and I think it might get them into the postseason this year. So hear me now, hopefully believe me later, but I'm taking the Jets. So those are some long-term future bets I'm making on FanDuel right now. Jalen Hurts for MVP. I'm going to put some money on Jalen Carter for Defensive Player of the Year. And a team that could surprise and get into the postseason, I think could be the New York Jets. So you can go to FanDuel. You can use the promo code LOCKEDON. You can get in on the action all day, every day, as we get ready for the 2025 NFL season. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We're back next week, Monday through Friday, so subscribe on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.